Well, hello and welcome to another episode of DAWNCast. I'm Dai Lee, and that was Wesa Chau with the crystal singing bowl. And do it from Melbourne. Hi, Wesa, how are you?
Good, thank you, Dai. It has been a long time.
It sure has. Oh my God, that was so relaxing. Oh, well, look, for those who don't know, Wesa Chau is a social entrepreneur, an influential social entrepreneur, as well as a multicultural campaigner. Anything around the equity, diversity, and inclusion space, Wesa is there, a strong advocate in that space. So glad that she's joining us. And she's joining us today to talk about her upcoming campaign in the Melbourne City Council election on the October the 24th. Is that right, Wesa?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, and tell us, you are doing something, you are leading the ticket. What does it all mean?
Yeah, so I'm going to be the Deputy Lord Mayor candidate in the
Wow.
upcoming election. And in City of Melbourne, the voting system is a little bit strange, where we have a leadership team, which consists of the Lord Mayor and the Deputy Lord Mayor, and then you've got the councillor ticket, which operates similar to a Senate ticket.
Right. Okay.
And so I'll be on the leadership team ticket.
Is that an unusual thing to happen?
Yeah, it is very unusual. So for other councils, it is you get elected to the council first, and then the councillors decide who their mayor would be. Whereas in City of Melbourne, people actually have an opportunity to select their Lord Mayor and Deputy Lord Mayor directly.
Ah, okay. So it's a popularly elected mayor and deputy mayor.
So it's almost like a presidency kind of election.
Campaign, that's right. And for
Yeah.
those Australians in particular in Australia who are listening to this vodcast, our local government election, different states have different systems. And as we just explained, some councils area would elect councillors, and then those councillors determined who the mayor is. Whereas in some councils, and in the case of Melbourne City Council, the people of that city elect the mayor, and in your case, the deputy mayor as well.
Exactly.
And is that something we should be really kind of yay about? I don't know. If you don't understand the political process, how significant is that move?
It is quite significant because, like I said, because the Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor, they are in the leadership team almost like a president. So the president and the vice president of City of Melbourne. For those who don't understand Australian politics, you can probably think about it from the US presidency election. So that's why it's quite significant. And I guess from my perspective, I'm also on the Labor team. So our team has been endorsed by the Australian Labor Party. And the reason why it's significant is because the Labor Party hasn't actually endorsed a ticket for many years. It's been last century since we had the last endorsement
All
by the
right.
Labor Party. Yeah, so it's quite significant for that reason, and seeing how that pans out, because there had been a long time where the Labor Party have decided, well, we won't endorse any. It is not just for City of Melbourne, but also other local councils as well. So in the whole of Victoria, we've decided not to, but it's been we've decided that we will for this particular election. So it is quite significant from my perspective to be endorsed by my
What has the journey been like? Look, I mean, that's a big question in the sense that where you're going to ask me where you're going to start. What was it like then to get to this position, to be on this ticket, to be endorsed, and to run this, equivalent to president vice presidency campaign? What was the process like?
So just for this particular election or the whole process?
Let's look at this particular election and we'll go to the whole process in a minute.
I mean, I guess with all political any pre-selection, you go through a pre-selection process where you nominate yourself, you put your name in, and people get to vote. And I think this time, because it was the first time that the Labor Party have actually endorsed a ticket, there were probably not too many people who probably realised that we were actually endorsing a ticket. So in many ways, it was quite not difficult process this time.
Right.
But you can imagine most pre-selection processes can be quite contentious.
Very contentious and very, some people would say, quite toxic.
Yeah, so not at all for this one.
Right. Okay.
So very lucky to be in that situation. It might not be the same in a couple of years' time when we have pre-selections again for next council election.
So what are the chances of you getting elected being on an endorsed ticket?
It's actually really hard to know. Like I said, because we haven't actually endorsed a ticket for a long, long time. But at the same time, the Labor brand in the City of Melbourne is still quite well known, even though we have had a lot of fights with the Greens in the past. But at the same time, though, in the City of Melbourne, the other different thing with City of Melbourne is that businesses actually get 2 votes.
Right.
As opposed to residents and landlords who only get 1. And so because of that, it is geared towards the business vote. And Labor has always been very good to small businesses, and that's what a lot of the obviously local council businesses would be about, small businesses. So I think it's hard to know because we haven't tested it. So it'll be a really interesting election coming up.
It will be, in particular, with what Daniel Andrews has been doing in terms of COVID to Victoria. A lot of restrictions, I believe a further 2 weeks extension. So by the time this probably goes to air, that you would have come through the 2 weeks further restriction that he has just recently announced to Victorians. But do you think, his decisions, the policies around COVID-19 has really impacted small business? How is that going to play out, do you think?
Yeah, it's a very good question. There's a lot of people who do understand that this is about a health concern. So, yes, it is impacting on businesses, but at the same time, I think people do understand that this is also about protecting lives and saving lives as well. So, and it's very unfortunate to see so many people who've caught COVID and unfortunately passed away as well. So I think it is going to be a balance. But I think the restriction is actually impacting on our campaign as well. So it's not just the businesses, it's actually on political campaigns as well, where we're not really allowed to do much for campaigning apart from Zoom meetings, apart from phone calls.
My God. So you can't even go out there to shake hands with people, to do what normally in campaignings people do, or like being involved in political campaigning, you go out to have stalls and you meet with people, you handshake. So you can't do any of that. You couldn't do any of that.
Not at all. So we can't even do lifting. So
you can't even do lift dropping, like dropping.
No. Yeah.
Oh my God. Wow.
So it is impacting on campaigning as well. So there is one thing that we can do. We can use post office, but obviously that has a cost as well.
That's right. Wow. So how do you get your message across to the people of Melbourne City? How do they know who you are? How do they know who they're going to vote for?
Yeah, through online, through phone calls, through Zoom meetings, and going to as many forums as I can. So
online.
Pretty much. So I'd be, going through LinkedIn, seeing what's going on and just join in. And if there's opportunities to talk, I'll, jump in and, say a few words. So it is interesting times.
Oh my gosh. Well, I hope probably through all those all of those Zoom meetings, that's probably why you got to turn to crystal ball singing just to keep up some sort of centeredness, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's definitely helping me, that's for sure.
Now, you've been involved in politics for a long time, haven't you, Wesa? Tell us a bit
Yes.
about when did you join the Labor Party and why did you join the Labor Party?
Yeah, I'm not one of those people who started off 16 or 18 really wanting to be involved in politics, partly because of my migrant background. It's when you're, I suppose, being from a Chinese Australian background, we talk a lot about being, doctors and engineers and accountants. Politician is definitely not one of those professions.
I can relate to that.
But then what happened was I started doing a lot of work with international students and I started the Australian Federation of International Students and was fighting for the rights of international students at the time. And what I discovered through that journey was the importance of getting involved in politics and what you can actually achieve through politics. And during that time, I did a lot of work with some of the members of parliament, and many of them were Labor. And I couldn't actually get any meetings with the Liberal Party in Victoria at the time because international students were not voters and people weren't just weren't interested. And through working with some of the Labor MPs, I got to realise, how important it is, and to be able to push some of the ideas that we wanted to achieve. And because of that work, and I participated on the Ministerial Council for Overseas Students at the time, and because of that advocacy, it resulted in the International Student Care Service, which is kind of like a support centre for international students. So it was a big thing at the time. And now it's transformed to Study Melbourne. But so it was actually through that work I realised, okay, well, politics can actually change lives.
So you thought or you felt that there was an opportunity to give voice to a particular group of people within the Victorian or Victoria?
Yeah. So, because I'm the type of person who, well, if I've done nothing, then I really don't have a right to complain. And so, but then if I've tried and did everything I can and it's still not happening, then I have a right to say, well, the government is not listening or the government is not doing anything. So I've kind of taken that approach. It's kind of the balance between advocacy and being in government as well. So understanding the interface, I guess, between the community and government and how that we can actually make that work.
And you've ran before, haven't you, for a federal seat, if my memory serves me right?
Yeah, so I ran in 2013 in the City of Higgins, and that was a very, I guess, blue ribbon Liberal Party seat. And at the time I was running against Kelly O'Dwyer.
Oh, wow. Did you know what you were doing?
Yeah, it was good fun. It was actually genuinely good fun.
So what have you learnt? So how long now have you been involved in politics? Or almost a decade?
2004. So it's been 16 years now.
Wow. My God. That's a long journey.
Yeah. Well, initially when I joined the party, it was I just wanted to join the party and basically see how I can contribute to the party. It was in 2013 that I got much more involved in politics. Well, being a candidate makes you kind of be involved a lot more.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can talk about that experience. There are ebbs and flows, in life. What are some of those ebbs and flows in that political journey of yours?
I think in terms of, getting involved in politics, it really has been a journey. So I think getting involved, being a candidate, I started to understand. It's actually quite interesting. So it's almost like overnight, as soon as you become a candidate, everything that you've done in the community beforehand just change from people's perception. It's like, oh, now you're a politician, so you must be a bad person, rather than actually seeing the person as the whole, to say, well, actually, no, this person have actually done a lot of things in the past. Now they've decided to put their hands up to run in politics. I think that is something that I find quite interesting.
So what did you learn? What were some of those moments when you felt that, I've done this much and now I believe I'm in a position to be able to influence another level, but by the sound of it, it sounded as if you were, I don't know if is attacked the right word to use here, by people in the community. What did that make you feel then, if that was happening to you?
Yeah, it was difficult. It was a journey for me to understand, well, now people actually see me as part of the government, and therefore I'm responsible. But then at the same time, you don't want to take it on fully yourself as well, because some of the policies that any political parties come up with, you're not necessarily responsible as a candidate.
I was going to say, because you're a candidate, you're not even in government. I mean, you're running to get in. Isn't that right?
Yeah. And that's the difficult part.
Yeah, how to explain it to people. Like, you're not actually elected.
And you can't. And for a lot of people, they wouldn't take it, because you're a candidate for the Labor Party. Therefore, any Labor policies, you must be responsible. And it's almost like, if you work for ANZ and there's something happening in the board, are you then responsible? It's almost like that, right?
Well, they reckon if you're on the board of the ANZ, then you would be responsible.
Yes, but then not if you're a staff member working.
Not if you're staff. Yeah, that's right. So if your staff you're different. But if you're on the top senior leadership team, then that will be you would be saying, they'd say that, well, you're at the board. So while you might not be involved in the operations, but you are supporting, condoning the culture, the policy, whatever of that organisation, if you're at that senior leadership role.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess, the equivalent would be, if you're in cabinet, then of course you're responsible.
Yeah.
But then if you're a candidate, you're almost like a staff.
Yeah, you're just a candidate. You're not even in there yet. But so for you, what it's 16 years is a long journey, and what have been some of the lessons that you've learned along the way? Not just for the Labor Party, but in politics, as a woman of Asian heritage as well.
Actually, it's interesting, because I'm currently doing my PhD looking at political skills. And when I say political skills, people always think, it's the policies and it's about good policy making. But actually, political skills is really about getting things done in a political setting. And I mean, there might be good policies, maybe there are bad policies as well, like in the mix. It depends on, where you stand, what your values are. So it's not really, there's no right policy, if that sort of makes sense. Because, if you're on different political parties, you'll have different right policies. But in looking at that, what really jumped out at me when I was, doing the data analysis, so there's one component of political skills which is about relationship building, and it is about building trust. And that was one of my weakest point when it comes to political parties. And it's harder because you don't really know how to engage with people within the party. And a lot of people, especially when you're younger, they do a lot of pubs and drinks and all that I didn't really enjoy doing, which meant that it was much harder for me to build that relationship with the people within the party.
The networking.
Exactly. So I can build a relationship with my community. So I might have really good relationship with, the Chinese Australian community and the Asian Australian community. But then when it comes to, and also the multicultural communities as well. But then when it comes to the traditional, very Anglo culture, that's when it took a bit more time and effort. It took a lot of time to actually observe what they do. I mean, even if you don't do the, young Labour or people on the other side, young Liberal events, you still get involved in a lot of other events. And I think the Labor Party have also started to open up a little bit to have more women events, women-friendly events, campaigning that are more suitable for women. And so the party have actually opened up to start doing that. And through watching that process, I started to understand, okay, so there might be opportunities to actually bring in the cultural diversity as well.
So obviously, it sounds like major parties, not just Labor, but other major parties. I mean, there are only two mainly at the moment. Are seeing? Are you saying they are now more alert to, or more aware, not alert, more aware to the fact that there are culturally diverse, people like yourself, candidates or members of the public who might want to join the party. But not just that, because I mean, the non-English speaking population have always joined the major parties. Like, we have all of those branch stacking stories, as you've seen in Melbourne, the branch stacking stories in Melbourne by the Labor Party and also the Liberal Party. But you're saying that they're more open now to creating an atmosphere whereby people like yourself and women in particular are able to meet and network, or network in the corporate sense, but in the political sense, get together and talk and find some kind of connection so that they can actually, connect and learn and hopefully grow and develop relationships?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so it's actually a great thing to see, because what I've started to realize, because in the past few years, I've also started Poliversity, which is to bring cultural diversity within the Labor Party. And initially I thought, this is not, it's not really achieving anything. But after a couple of years, now I realised that the conversations that we had around the country to MPs are actually having an impact. At least they're thinking about it. Hasn't happened yet because, politics takes a long time, right? So understand and accept that things can't change within like 2 years. We all think that it should, but it doesn't. And also starting to hear stories from MPs, even if they want to push for something, even with their roles, it takes about 2 years. So
for those who are listening to the word MPs, means members of parliament.
Yes,
MPs,
that's it.
sorry.
That's it.
Yeah. So just in case we do have international viewers, and they might think, what's MPs? What's MPs is members of parliament. So you said that you got involved in politics through the international students cause. But what is it that drives you? What fuels you, Wesa?
It's really about good decision making and good policy making. Because I believe in having diversity for the reason of ensuring that we create good policies. And we've seen in many research to know that if you've got a diverse team, it means that you take more perspectives into account, and therefore policy development becomes more suitable for the wider community. So that's what drives me.
Good policies, so that you can, are you saying in seeing good policies, you can see good solutions for society? Is that what you're trying to do?
Absolutely. I wanted to make sure that when we make policies, culturally diverse communities is not an afterthought, that people understand that, well, if we're going to have this policy, then it's going to impact the community in this way. At least if it is considered and we still decide to, go down a particular policy path, that's okay, but at least we've considered it.
You're also the CEO of Cultural Intelligence.
Yes, that's it.
So what is the work that you do there, and how aligned is that with the work that you're doing or what you're trying to achieve through the political path?
Yeah, so for cultural intelligence, I work with businesses and organizations to think about cultural diversity. And that's why I bring that understanding and framework to whatever I do as well. And for example, with businesses, it might be thinking about how do they recruit and retain culturally diverse staff, and also how to develop them so that they're actually advancing in their careers as well. Because we also know that there's a lot of, especially Asian Australians, who get to a certain level in their organisation and can't continue further in their careers. And just recently, I think even SBS, we had people talking about, it's just about the presenters that needs to be diverse. It doesn't have to be senior management. Well, I believe that's wrong. And the reason why I think it's wrong is because when you create policies and procedures and thinking, and when you consider the whole organization, if you don't have the diverse component and thinking into how you make the decision, it's not going to be suitable for certain people. So you might say, oh, well, we can just get culturally diverse presenters, but what if your HR policies doesn't actually suit people of color? So you can't attract them, you can't retain them, and so even if you do attract them, they will leave.
Talking about the lack of diversity, in those senior leadership positions, as you know, I'm also passionate about that space, but I believe that the talent pool, that we might have some people there, but perhaps they're not there yet, in a sense that they have not always, as you've described, kind of alluded to before, the networking, the going out there, the drinking beers, and the kind of matey kind of environment that would require for you to succeed or grow through building that relationship to step up. If you're not part of that and doing that networking, doing that kind of going out there and mixing with the right crowd, if I can put it that way, if people don't do that, then they don't have the network to really, I suppose, progress. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, so that's why I also started last year the A+ influencers, and that was a program I've developed with two other people, Christine and John, to actually help people develop the skills that enables them to do that, and do it in such a way that is authentic. And I think one of the things that, even for me, like, okay, well, I don't necessarily enjoy always going to the pub, but then I might be able to go once in a while. So, and doing it in such a way that I'm not actually changing myself necessarily, but then adapting to different circumstances.
So you obviously acknowledge that there are some of those soft skill set that people like you and I don't drink either, but, I can go down to the pub and sit there and have a glass of orange juice and let them drink away. But taking that first step, isn't it, to go, not necessarily the pub, really. It's a two-way thing, because if that group of people feel that we are uncomfortable in a pub setting environment, maybe once in a while they go to a restaurant or to a hot pot. That's right, to a hot pot. So, I think creating that inclusive mindset is very important, I believe.
And there are things that we can do as well. So, like, the first few times you might join them at the pub, but then next time you might suggest, hey, why don't we go hot pot?
Yeah, that's right.
And they might actually enjoy it, right?
I'm sure they will. Now, what has been some of the challenges along the journey that you have made in politics?
Lots.
Are there any dark moments and really kind of down moments when you think, listen, I don't think I can continue this any longer?
Well, failing in pre-selection is, it does get to you. But then at the same time, I've often hear a lot of people who have been elected now, they've also gone through it themselves. So realizing it is not only a person of colour who would go through something like that. It's not just only women that would go through failures, and to
But
be able to balance.
but is that failure because it's the system? It's got to do with numbers. So would you see yourself as failing to be pre-selected?
The first time you would see it as failing, absolutely. But then after the talk with yourself, you realize that it's actually part of the journey. It's actually not, as you said, it's actually not failing. It's actually part of the journey, and also a journey to start to have more people get to know you as well. Because through those experiences, you do a lot of campaigning. You call a lot of people, a lot of members within the party. And one thing that I've starting to appreciate a lot more is actually grassroots members within political parties. Because when you run campaigns, like when I was running for Higgins, there were so many people that come out to help and volunteer in my campaign. I don't even know them. And yes, they are actually campaigning for the values, but then at the same time, I mean, even just thinking about sometimes our own communities, unless you know them, you might not actually go and help them, right? But the fact that they do, because it takes a lot of time, sometimes getting up early in the morning, giving out flyers at train stations, it can be quite daunting. And so I've started to appreciate grassroots members a lot more now because, just the time they actually spent on campaigning. And if you ask, are there any volunteers, there'll always be some people who say, yes, I'm happy to, do some phone calling and hand out flyers and things like that.
So were there moments when you say, were there moments where you would have thought to yourself, that's it, I don't think I can continue down this path, it's just too much?
Absolutely. There were moments like that for sure.
Can you give us a glimpse about what happened when an example? Is there something that you can give us?
Sometimes even just arguing with people, why is it important to have cultural diversity? And sometimes really after really intense arguments with people about that, it's like, why do I even bother? Like, I can easily, and sometimes it can get quite intense, right? And people have their, really strong views. I'm like, I thought this is, we shouldn't even be arguing whether or not there should be diversity. It shouldn't, people should actually know. And those moments, and sometimes they come in like sets where you might have a big argument with someone and then another argument with another person and then an argument with another group. And then also, then you might have people from your own community who say, oh, it's just the way it is, right? And when you start to explain to them, why you should actually get involved in politics and all that, they're like, oh, no, not really.
Yeah, I know. They don't want to get, it's just like, oh, God.
And that's actually more demoralizing. It's like, I'm fighting hard for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to make it easier for people who are coming up in the future. But then at the same time, you're not appreciating it. So not only have you just had a really serious argument with somebody, and then you've got people in your community saying, oh, no, you don't need to do that.
Yeah. So do you turn to anybody for, in business you have coaches, you have mentors. One of the things I have found lacking is the, within the political arena is a mentor or coaches. You can get a business coach, for instance, but can you get a political coach? Somebody who can coach you through politics.
Yeah, so I have accumulated a few over the years.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So just people I can talk to. They're not necessarily mentors or coaches per se. It's just people I, pick up the phone and say, hey, can we just have a chat kind of thing. And it's interesting because that's also a journey in actually finding the people, because when I first got into politics, I thought, in politics you can trust no one. That's the perception I had. And I don't know where that came from, but I think it's just a perception that people have. You can't trust any politicians. But then you realize that unless you actually open up to people, people don't open up to you either. And so that, again, is also a journey to understand, well, who you can trust, who you can't trust. And there are always good people as well as bad people.
Yep, absolutely. And so do you think now you've got to the stage whereby you can ascertain, or you can say, this is the person that I can go to for this, and I can trust them to give me the relevant or appropriate advice for what I'm about to do? Is there enough of that in your around you?
Yes.
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
That's good, because that's very important,
Yeah, it's and with political parties, everything shifts very quickly, right? So having those advice and having people that I can speak to, it's very important.
So what have been some of the highlights?
Well, some of the highlights, when you start to actually get things going and you feel like, oh my God, some of the work actually paid off, that's some of the highlights. So last year I was working with the Labor Academy on the Labor Diversity Fellowship, and that was a program for culturally diverse young people to understand the party a bit more, and some of the history of Labor, understanding how Australian politics works, and also for us to also get a much better understanding on other cultural communities, because sometimes we always think, oh yeah, Chinese people are always like this and nobody understands. But then you realize actually other culturally diverse communities also have very similar situations and community politics happening as well.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of sharing and understanding between different cultural groups, because I think in the past there has always been you've got your Chinese group, you've got your Indian groups, and then you've got your whatever groups, right?
Vietnamese
but
groups.
I think Vietnamese groups, absolutely. And then I think it's time for us to actually bring all these groups together and share our experiences, but also help each other out.
You think you're getting there with it, with that idea? Is that idea taking some sort of form or shape?
It is an idea that is starting to take shape, and I think it is up to the younger people to do that as well. Because it's much easier for the younger generation to, go to another community function and feel at home. And, having friends, I'm sure there's a lot of culturally diverse or any young people having culturally diverse friends. And so it's a lot easier for people to start doing that for that reason. But then it is still a journey, though. We're still not quite there, but I think we're getting there.
Well, thank you. On that note, thanks so much for your time, Wesa, and wishing you luck on October the 24th. I hear that you're not going to be handing out any how to vote on the day, but it's postal vote.
Absolutely, yes.
I don't know how you're going to do that, but good luck.
Thank you. I'll rely on DAWNCast to spread the word.
I will spread the word, so I will definitely share and making sure that people get an insight into a glimpse of that political journey anyway, and really wishing you so much luck, Wesa, and I hope you put a lot of your energy and your passion into it. So I would like to see you succeed.
Thank you.
Okay. That's it from me. I'm Daily at DAWNCast. And if you like to hear more stories like this, please make sure you click on the bell button, subscribe below, and subscribe to our channel, www.youtube.com/DAWNCast. So talk to you soon. Bye.